So I'm Andrew Miller. I work at the University of Edinburgh in a research centre called Synthesis. We are one of the 6 UK centres funded for systems biology, and we're now very interested in synthetic biology. What do I mean by those? Well, as an example, we work on a complex gene network, which generates the biological clock in plants. That we've studied in the lab species Arabidopsis thaliana, but also in a marine microalga, which happens to be genetically tractable. So we're interested now in transferring our understanding of complex networks like these into crop species and onto larger scales, and we've had a number of projects which aim to do so. But in addition, just to support our basic research, we've developed a number of leading-edge technical capabilities, so robotic qPCR, drug screening, proteomics, in vivo imaging, we have plant physiology, and a particular focus on modeling. A whole range of different types of models which are useful at different scales in mathematics and from computer science. So in an EU project, for example, we've taken this plant clock network. We already know how that network controls the flowering time of plants, which in turn determines when you can harvest barley grain, for example. We know how that network controls the growth rate, how they elongate within the day. What our project is now focusing on is how the clock controls metabolism, so the major carbon storage compound, starch, and also the isoprenoid pathway, which produces useful things like chlorophyll, allows the plant to photosynthesize. And the output from that was to produce a model which combined gene regulation, carbon metabolism, and the structure of this little plant. And so this systems biology will predict plant biomass. We can predict the mass of every leaf in the plant, depending on the environmental conditions. And that's applicable to things like mode of action studies, where you're aiming to engineer one part of that network, and you want to know what it's going to do for the biomass of the plant overall. Our next targets are to move this type of technology into crops, to include nitrogen use efficiency and the nitrogen budget, as well as the plant's carbon budget, to understand where these biological processes may find market application, and to develop better cyber infrastructure to roll this out on a large scale. So we work with EPCC, the Edinburgh University Supercomputing Centre, who support EPSRC's data infrastructure for the UK. So we have very significant links to computational science to underpin this type of work. Our newest area of work is in synthetic biology. So synthetic biology is the engineering, rational engineering of biological processes, which uses modeling, but aims to do so on a much larger, but also on a more detailed scale. So we have fine manipulation simultaneously of very large numbers of genes, so up to 20, hundreds, even low thousands of genes simultaneously. That's the technology we're building now. And we look to find partners who can help us to find applications for these technologies, and also to develop new technologies, particularly in synthetic biology. We've had existing projects with TSB in a number of different areas, mainly smaller projects, but using both the experimental capabilities, the modeling, and focusing on particular products.
Good morning, everyone, I think. My name is David Ross from SRUC. SRUC is Scotland's Rural College, and my pitch today really is a generic pitch on the resources and services that we offer to industry partners, potential industry partners within the Agritech Capitalist Programme. So I'm just going to show some pretty pictures of the resources and capabilities we have. I hope it's legible to you, but one of the main resources we have within our agricultural resources obviously are farms, and they split up into a series of different types of farms and different types of outputs. So I'm just quantifying these for your benefit to let you see what we can do. We obviously can do all the ruminant species, and we do avian and pigs and animal as well. And I just wanted to just run through what the capacity was. We have a range of different projects active at the minute, looking at different outputs from our beef system. We have about 230 beef animals in our beef research centre. We have about 1,850 breeding sheep in our Lowland unit, which is near to Edinburgh. We have our dairy research centre down in Dumfries, which has about 400 animals in lactation currently, running on about 252 hectares. And we have a hill and mountain research centre near Craiglarroch that occupies about just under 2,500 hectares, with running about 1,600 sheep and 30 beef cows. Now, all of these resources are currently used on other projects, including some TSB projects that are active at the moment. We have a pig unit with 100 breeders that's local to here. I've missed off the actual avian bullet point, and I do regret that because I've looked at the tables that have got livestock in it, and I see a biped in the picture. So we do have an avian science capacity as well. We have arable trials and an arable capacity as well, and these pictures here represent some of the resources we have. We have a range of active measurement capacities within our milk supply system, a range of measurement capacities within our beef supply system, including this picture up here, which you may or may not see, which is our greenhouse gas measurement system for beef cattle. And this is a picture of our Craiglarroch farm, showing the farm in the background. Now, just to move on to some of the sort of other aspects that we do, we're looking really at farm system studies. So we're looking at nutrition and efficiency, if people are interested in that, through the Catalyst. We can perform trials on nutrition, feed products, especially related to ruminants. We look at product test and development with a few projects live at the moment, looking at developing solutions to performance efficiency in animals. We look at the food product itself in the primary processing sector, looking at the quality. These types of instruments here and here are looking at things like fatty acid components within the food product itself, so we can tie in the production side of things with the quality of the food product. A slide here in the middle really just summarises some of the things that we're doing with remote sensing. We're looking at multispectral and hyperspectral imaging and remote sensing to look at the things that we can extract out those data to look at crop quality components, pathogens, or physiological components in crops. So that's my email address down there. I don't know where I've got to in yellow and red yet, but I've come to the end. I'll just say that there's 3 of us here, I think at least 3 of us here today, you can speak to, and this presentation here really complements a succeeding presentation by Richard Dewhurst, who will be a few down the line later on, who will present more about what we think would be profitable for us to work with other industry collaborators on. Lastly, downstream processing energy efficiency is another project we're active on that might relate to agricultural primary production.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. This morning we heard from everybody some of the challenges that we have in the industry for the primary production of crops and livestock. I'm going to focus on livestock here. And challenges of the climate change, on food production, on the cost of food, and that type of thing. And there are a number of solutions. They're just listed here. There's some generic solutions. At the Roslin Institute, we're particularly interested in the application of genomic technologies in all livestock species. It also helps us, obviously, with genetic selection for breeding. And those genomic technologies are used, yes, for primary breeding of livestock, but also that information is used to improve disease resistance, new vaccines, new targets for vaccines, etc. Now, this slide has got a lot of things on it, but it basically summarises some of the opportunities. There's a lot of information now and methods in genomics, and here are some applications that I'm interested in pursuing. Roslin is its expertise in all the livestock species. My particular interest is in poultry. Poultry, yes, chickens, turkeys, ducks, basically any bird that exists. I've got an interest in some form or other. And so in the last 10 years, particularly for chicken, and like I say, and other birds, there's been a lot of genome sequencing, so a lot of information now. But sequencing these birds, more and more information now, and continue to increase on what information is in those genomes. We have information about how those genes are expressed. And now, many of you know that we can sequence not only birds, but entire populations relatively cheaply. And particularly in the last year or so, we've been using that technology to look at the genetic variation and classify that variation, actually predicting what we think that variation can actually do in the genome of chickens. So, for example, we've just completed a link project with half the world's poultry companies and talking to the other half as well. For about 15 million genetic variants. And about 500,000 of those we can ascribe a function to. So we've got a lot of information resources and a lot of skills in genomics and bioinformatics, particularly at Roslin. So what kind of applications can we see? Well, we've worked with some of the biotech companies that come up with various arrays for genotyping, from usually like 50,000 to several 100,000, 500,000 markers. But there's a need to make these cheaper and cheaper and cheaper so we can genotype tens of thousands of samples. So I'm interested in speaking to people to companies that are developing new tools for genotyping, for example. We have, like I say here, a lot of information on predicting what genetic variants there are and what they do. So those are opportunities there to create new tools, maybe based on just the functional variants in your genome, and making those targeted to specific commercial populations. So we can target arrays. A lot of information on application of these things in genome selection, for example, even virtual karyotypes of birds, as well as a lot of genetic applications here. So these applications, I see the usual sort of three-way collaboration has been very successful in the last 10 years. Academics come up with ideas and new information. Biotech companies come up with great ways to exploit that information and tools. And then the primary breeders and the animal health companies to use that information. So hopefully the three of us can get together and produce some interesting projects. Thank you.
Climate Futures, we're something slightly different, I don't expect most people in the room. We provide support services to consortia undertaking research. And this spans the board through from technical expertise through to communication. Generally, as the name suggests, it's linked to climate work. Traditionally, it's been climate mitigation, carbon reduction, carbon offset, but increasingly we're finding ourselves involved in climate adaptation work, so I guess that would be more applicable to some of you in the room. So just some examples. We develop survey tools, questionnaires, we build inventories for people. We're involved in a programme led by the Potsdam Institute for climate change research. We're building a database of green communities across Europe. We're coordinating researchers and policymakers and communities across Europe. We're developing an interactive web-based tool. It's like a moving map, which will track green communities across Europe, and developing a project website as well. We're also organising a conference for the consortium partners, of whom there are 8 altogether, and undertaking training for of communities and partners. Here's a couple of other projects we're involved in, largely overseas. We're working with a group called Kuzamala, which is a permaculture centre in Malawi. Our partner on this project is the James Hutton Institute in Aberdeen, Dundee. So climate smart agriculture, preparing Malawians for the possibility that inorganic fertiliser subsidy is going to be cut, and effectively reacquainting them with old and natural techniques of farming, providing food diversity and food security, as well as adapting to climate change. And our role, Climate Futures, within this project is to, as we're undertaking participatory video, inviting communities in Malawi to share their stories with us. so we can evaluate our projects, but also so we can effectively communicate the project to the outside world, the Scottish Government, who are our donors in this case, and wider stakeholders and undertake education programmes. We're also undertaking participatory mapping with communities, encouraging them to share their understanding of their local environment with us. Genemo, I noticed there's actually someone here who's working on neem. We started with Jatropha, neem and moringa as 3 agroforestry trees, but that's been broadened out to permaculture. We developed a website, we run a Scottish education programme, we work with Botanic Gardens here in Edinburgh, we undertake exhibitions and events. We're involved in a biogas programme in Ethiopia, Cameroon and Uganda. This is small-scale biogas at a community level, and our role within that is to create a website and communication network, but also how-to guides and undertake training with communities. So it's pretty broad what we do. It spans through from technical to communication. So, just in summary, why would you think of using a communication agency and a technical consultancy to help? It's pretty broad what we do. We're familiar with working with different types of communities and different stakeholders and answering and communicating to them in their language, and cutting through what's often very technical language and making it accessible to the wider population. And we're also very used to working with a wide range of donors and understanding their needs in terms of communicating outwards. And it's increasingly what we're recognising donors are expecting in the work that they're supporting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. My name is Bruce Alexander. I'm a medical entomologist by background. I worked on insects that transmit diseases. I represent a company called Zero Shield, and what we do is we develop novel methods of insect control based on working with people in a wide variety of fields that offer alternatives to the use of traditional chemical insecticides. As I say, my background is in medical entomology, so what I've been interested in the past and two of our projects relate to dengue fever, which is the world's most important mosquito-borne virus. It's got hundreds of millions of cases every year. We're working on a way of preventing that. And we're also working on ticks and Lyme disease. If you don't know much about Lyme disease, I'm not going to say much here, but you really ought to know much more about it because it's something that affects all of us. We're all at risk of it in this country and elsewhere in Europe. What I really want to talk about most is this, though. We were actually formed to develop a new type of insecticidal textile for use in a variety of applications, including mosquito nets. I say insecticidal because the state-of-the-art for the use of mosquito nets is a textile that's impregnated with traditional insecticides. We have an alternative, a textile that is insecticidal based on its structure, uses no insecticides whatsoever. And so we've been working on that for several years in relation to developing a new type of mosquito net. And that's been work done with the Non-Wovens Innovation and Research Institute at Leeds University, spin out of Leeds University. However, what I'm really interested in talking about to people today are the potential agricultural applications of that. This same textile, same principle, insecticidal based on the structure of the textile, and it has a number of potential applications in crop protection and also in livestock protection, we think. So we basically don't have very much experience of that, but just at the starting point of that. So we're looking for partners who can help us take these things forward. Here's a couple of applications you can see. Obviously crop netting. Various types of crop netting, various types of crops can be protected by physical barriers or barriers impregnated with insecticide. We're offering an alternative that would reduce the risk of pesticide resistance, any deleterious effects on human health, and deleterious effects to the environment. Here's another one that we think is a possible application. Banana bags, a big problem in many countries in the tropics. The banana bunches are protected by bags that are impregnated with chlorpyrifos, and we think our technology could be an alternative to these bags. So, what actually happens is they protect the bananas from insects, and people, when they harvest them, actually have to touch these bags and then throw them on the ground when they're harvesting, and the bags actually leach insecticide into the water course, and people are doubly exposed to these insecticides. So we think that's a potential application that could be very profitable. So we're interested in talking to anybody basically who's interested in some sort of commodity that can be protected in this way. We have a number of collaborations worldwide. We have in the past, so this is in Bangladesh. We're particularly a lot of collaboration, a lot of good contacts in Latin America. So we're very interested in doing stuff worldwide, in this country and worldwide. Okay, thanks very much.
What I'll be talking about today is really two different parts of things we've been doing. The first one is a specific call for collaborations and consortium formation. And the second one is more of a generic influence of what we've also been working on. There's a few, some of you here may know what I've been working on for the last 20 years, which is the acute phase proteins in animals as biomarkers of infection and inflammation and the quantitative measure of active disease processes. We're at the stage where we've developed a lot of methodologies, and there has been generating an increasing interest. Essentially, we've been on a sort of slow growth phase in the whole aspect of measuring these in animals. I do believe we're about to turn into more of an exponential growth, partly because of some of the other groups that are starting to use these facilities. This particular review, which I contributed to a section on the acute phase in ruminants and diseases, I was questioned by myself about the number of publications using the acute phase proteins as markers for quite a wide variety of conditions, particularly in nutritional research where investigators are using the acute phase to monitor changes of feed, particularly in ruminants, affecting the presence of endotoxin from the rumen. So I think the whole area is starting to take off, and the feasibility of what we're looking to do is to take some of our basic work from the methods we've been developing, and basically to answer the question once and for all, is what was the value of using these markers in farm animals, either in dairy and beef production, in swine and poultry production, and also in aquaculture. We're recently doing some case projects in both poultry and in salmon farming, and have been identifying some valuable biomarkers in those areas. So we're basically looking for either companies or SMEs that are able to develop the actual tests from laboratory into practical applications, end users that could see the value of these, and to build a consortium that will allow us to answer those questions as to whether these biomarkers are really of value, and then to build a market and to commercialise it properly. We have had a spin-out company, but that was really directed onto the companion animal field, where the markers are being shown to be of profitable use. So we have experience in the commercialization field. Second part is really about proteomics, where we've been working on this as part of the biomarker identification. Looking at biomarkers of animal health and disease, there's lots of the sort of knowledge-based discovery which has been used, which we used to begin with our work in acute phase. We took it all from the human field. And now proteomics can be used to identify biomarkers of health and disease in animals for a variety of different procedures. And some of you may not know, or some of you may have seen, that there is one text in using proteomics in animals. I happen to be one of the editors of this, and it describes both the technology for people that have not used it before, and also half it is about the uses in various situations in animals. It's not just biomarkers, but basically any particular area of animal science that uses proteins or wants to know what's happening to the protein, the end product of the genes, and proteomics is the coming way to do it. In farm animal work, there's been very little compared to laboratory animals and humans. And if you are interested in this area, there is actually a cost action, European-wide collaboration of people interested in farm animal proteomics. It's been going for, this is the 4th year. If you haven't heard of it before, then I'm sorry I haven't been able to inform you about it. And I'm the chairman of this cost action. It's been hugely successful, and across Europe we've got about every country in Europe plus what they call several countries, Australia, Argentina, South Africa, we're also involved. But there's a final meeting, in Milan in November, which anyone can come to. They'll be particularly encouraging to get industry involved, because that's one of the objectives of cost action, and we will be very, very pleased to see you there.
And good afternoon, everybody. I guess I must be the newest recruit to the UK research community, having just arrived in Edinburgh on Saturday to start my new job with SLUC, having worked for charities in Ireland for the last 5 years. We've taken the opportunity to give a fairly broad introduction to our interest in biomarkers and sensors for smart livestock production, and I'm going to give a little bit of detail about some of my specific interests in the feed efficiency and methane area. Now, I think that biomarkers and sensors hit on some of the really topical and exciting developments in livestock production. As has already been mentioned, the whole sequencing of livestock genomes and the decreasing cost of sequencing and the move towards individual genome sequencing means that there are exciting opportunities. The big log jam is in the phenotyping area, the ability to measure things at low cost on lots of animals. So we're interested in either biochemical tests, blood tests, or in on-farm sensing systems for phenotyping, for characterising animals in relation to feed efficiency, in relation to health and welfare. The second big exciting development is the whole area of precision livestock farming, whether that's managing animals in relation to health or welfare or feeding, and the same kind of sensors or chemical biomarkers for monitoring live animals are of interest to us. The third area that we see as part of the overall picture is the consumer interest in food production and quality, how produced and where produced. And some of the chemical markers that we're interested in for monitoring the live animal are also highly relevant in relation to the product. So my own interests and recent research in the last 3 or 4 years have been in blood tests for based on natural isotopic fractionation. It's a phenomenon that takes place naturally. Stable isotopes are natural components. We're not adding anything that's unusual. We're just measuring what's going on. We've been using a measurement of nitrogen-15 content in blood plasma as a proxy for feed efficiency. We have a paper just about to come out in British Journal of Nutrition about that, and we see potential for applying that in selecting for feed efficiency. Biggest fixed cost in production is the cost of feed. Can we find animals that use feed more efficiently? Pig and poultry industries have made major advances in this, much more difficult in the ruminant industries, so we have a proxy for feed efficiency. The other proxy that we've been working on is using deuterium, stable isotope of hydrogen, as a proxy for methane production. Dave Ross earlier on showed our really expensive methane chambers, very difficult, complex way of measuring methane production, 5 or 6 animals at a time. If we want to get into the genetics or genomics of how the host controls methane production, we need to be able to measure on hundreds or thousands of animals, and we're assessing deuterium as a proxy, so simply taking a blood sample and looking at the deuterium content in the water within plasma. And we see applications of that, as I've already mentioned, in breeding, in management, and potentially in marketing. Consumers interested in us proving our claims. We're also interested to look for collaborators in a range of other areas. One of my other interests is in breath analysis. We've done a lot of detailed analysis of the composition of animal breath. In our methane work, we've been measuring methane in feeding equipment and in milking equipment. There are lots of other things that we could be measuring if we had the right sensors in place that could be diagnostic for health or feeding, protein feeding, acidosis, ketosis, all of those areas. And just not my own areas of interest, but just to flag that within our research centre and within the wider college, there's interest in online analysis of meat and milk, ongoing work in relation to body imaging for a range of nutritional or animal welfare applications, and also research on measuring activity in various ways. Thank you.
I'm representing Hereford University, specifically the School of Life Sciences, and what I'd like to do is very briefly outline some of the expertise we have and some of the capabilities we have that are relevant to this particular course. So we have expertise in food manufacturing, we have a new capacity in crop and soil science. We've increased our staff portfolio to bring in soil scientists. We work on fat replacement in food, so novel uses for crops and proteins. In particular, we have a lot of expertise in the brewing and distilling area, and also the raw materials for brewing and distilling on yeast and on cereals. We have a lot of expertise in the area of aquaculture, production of diets, production of vaccines, novel vaccines in aquaculture. In addition, we work on food safety, food microbiology, novel ways of preventing food spoilage. We have expertise in nanotechnology and biochemical analysis of foods for nutrients or mycotoxins, and also in the environmental impact of food production. So the facilities that we can offer, so we have, this ranges all the way from molecular and biochemical analysis, so proteomics, qPCR, various forms of mass spectrometry, confocal microscopy, and also microbiological analysis. In addition, we have expertise in facilities for food analysis. So after novel ways of producing proteins or food products, we can analyze the rheology, the texture, and we also have a sensory suite as well. Further downstream, we can look at food production as well. We have a 200 hectolitre brewery, and we also have a distillery. We have an aquarium. We can keep animals in salt water and fresh water for vaccine testing, for food testing. And we have plant growth room facilities, specifically for GM, or genetically modified cereals, which happens to be my particular area. So that's a very brief outline of the interests and capabilities and facilities that are available for projects relevant to this particular course. Thank you.
Well, hi everybody. My name is Stephen Marshall from Strathclyde University, and we come from a background in signal processing. And this is a kind of applied mathematics, programming and statistics to analyse data. And our main area of expertise is in analysis of digital images. And what we're finding more and more is that people from other areas find that their results are presented in the form of digital images. They can see what they want to see out of the pictures, but they need to quantify that. They need to count particles, they need to find edges, they need to separate things, they need to do things with those images. Usually from a background where they don't really have the expertise to do that. They often spend a lot of money on packages which just don't work because it doesn't do exactly what they need to do. So we have a lot of experience of working closely together with people from different areas, different backgrounds, in order to provide solutions. And recently we set up the it's probably about 3 years ago, set up the Hyperspectral Imaging Centre. Hyperspectral imaging relies on cameras which collect a full spectrum of wavelengths of light. And so therefore each pixel is a spectrum. And the light reflected from different types of material has a different spectral profile. So often you can tell if something's undergone a chemical change or is diseased or has had some sort of change by just looking at its spectrum. So in fact it's kind of the ultimate non-destructive testing. It's particularly useful where it might replace wet lab work, so that you can immediately, by imaging it, you can see if this has undergone some change, or if you have some sort of spatial distribution where something is changing spatially. So these are some of the companies that we've worked with. You'll see here in the pharmaceutical industry and the food and drink industry, where these companies have materials which look the same, but chemically they're different. And they want to be able to display that quickly through imaging. And I would say our role in this is the people who go from data to decisions. So whereas you might have a set of data, your input data might be 1D, it might be 2D, it might be hyperspectral data, what most people want then is to label that data and to say what it is. And usually, if you look at some hyperspectral data, then each of the different pixels here corresponding, this is some work for the defence industry, and looking at whether or not there are tanks, whether or not there's water content, whether or not the surface is disturbed. Each of those pixels will have a different spectral profile. Now, some of these effects here are due to water content and absorption, so all of the material will have that. So it's no good comparing them on those parts. You have to be able to filter those out. And what we're able to do is come up with statistical classifiers. So it's a type of applied mathematics where we're relying on the end user to say this is a good one, this is a bad one. This one's contaminated, this one's not. This one's diseased, this one's not. And then we could take those samples, go away and image them, and then come up with an optimum classifier which would be able to tell you at the press of a button which one of the two categories that fell into. A lot of our, certainly researchers in, sort of my colleagues in biology and pharmacy, work with images but spend a lot of time analysing them by hand, by just clicking and measuring distances. That's not going to scale up. If your volume of data goes up, then that doesn't scale up. So I would say I could help in two ways. One would be if you're working with images, you want to extract things and you're struggling to do that, and could help at that level. And also using of hyperspectral data, maybe for something like crop monitoring, by looking at from an aerial photograph and being able to see if a difference has taken place. And I can team up with Peter Morris, who you've just heard from, who'll be able to provide the expertise in that area. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. So my name is Jim Wilson. I'm a director of Soil Essentials. We're a precision farming company based in Angus, Scotland. We've also another office in Yorkshire. I'm unusual in that I'm a farmer. So I'm coming from a very practical farming background. In 2000, we got interested, or I personally got interested in our farm Soil Essentials because I was interested in how I could best use all the crop inputs into across my farm and my spatial areas. So now we supply three different core products. We supply agronomy products, which is basically we take around about 50,000 soil samples a year that are actually individually sampled, sent off to the lab, analysed, and then reported back to the farmer with recommendations for lime, fertiliser, chemicals, that sort of thing. We also supply yield mapping equipment to fit onto potato harvesters, combines, which gives us a very good measure of how much we're taking off each spatial area of the field. And again, we use that in our data application map production. A second division of the business is that we resell auto steering systems. We are resellers for Trimble in the north of the UK, and Trimble supply auto steering systems. So we steer tractors down to 2 centimetres accuracy, and we have hundreds and hundreds of those systems out there. One unique part of our own network, our own building, is that We have our own RTK network right throughout the UK. So we have about, I forget now, maybe 70 or 80 base stations distributed throughout the UK, all connected to the internet, all streaming RTK corrections back to our central server, then out over GSM to individual tractors. So the advantage of this is that we can see how many tractors are working, how many of our tractors with our equipment on it are working. We can then send recommendations straight to those tractors. We can receive as applied maps back, and we can see fuel, we can pull data off the can of the tractor, like fuel consumption, wheel slip, engine temperatures, draft force, that sort of thing. Pull that back right over the web, and then map it in our web map system. The third thing that we really got interested in was that I could see perhaps 3 or 4 years ago that we needed a geospatial system there to incorporate all this data. So we started developing our own web-based mapping system. So now we have our own IT staff developing web-based special portals where we supply customers with area recommendations, showing them maps. Those portals have been designed right from the start to be multi-language and also reskinnable. So our route to market is to go to other companies who need a precision farming part to their system, and then we would reskin the service and resell it to them. What we're interested in is we've just got a TSB project that looks at modelling of blight into a subfield scale. So that's going to be quite interesting. And what we're interested in is learning more about crop and disease models with weather and microclimate. We do have a conceptual map of how this works, where we have customers on the right-hand side with the central web mapping service in the middle there. We've designed it also to integrate with our accounting model, which is this part, because one of the challenges for us as a small SME is that we're moving away from a small number of very large value transactions, i.e. equipment, to a very large number of small value transactions as a service model, and that's why we've had to integrate it in with our own accounting model. And we're really pooling in all the separate little services all the way around the outside to that. So we really see ourselves as a company that deals directly with customers, but we would like to be a bridge between the scientific community with the brilliant scientific ideas that are out there, and we would like to then find a way to incorporate that and deliver them to our end customers, the farmers. And I'd like to say, right at the end, is that we do like doing these innovative things. So, and we like to support farmers because we are farmers today. And this is we managed to get a weather balloon up to 130,000 feet to take a picture, and had we had a bit of a Facebook campaign. So if you'd like to, I would just think we're here to support farmers, and I think it's a great thing that we do.
I'd like to tell a little bit about the James Hutton Institute today. It's maybe not a name you've heard of because we're still relatively new, only 2.5 years old. It was a merger between the Scottish Crop Research Institute in Dundee and the Macaulay Land Use Research Institute in Aberdeen. We're now probably the largest research institute of its type in Europe, focusing on global issues such as food, energy and water security, and exactly what the agri-tech strategy is all about. I won't go into great details about all the different areas of expertise that we've got, but just to say that a few of the key areas are, I won't use the fancy names that the official ones are, just put it into plain English. Crop protection, plant pathology. We're developing sustainable production systems. That can mean minimising inputs, whether it's fertiliser or crop protection products. We're always looking at yield and enhancing yield, because at the end of the day, that's how farmers make money, and that's what we all have to keep an eye on. And we also look at water. Water is incredibly important for agriculture, so irrigation and runoff, etc. So we have expertise in that area. I won't focus on all the resources and facilities that we've got. Take it as read. We've got lots of land, 1,000 hectares of land, we've got the glass houses, we've got the equipment, we've got the world-class scientists, we've got 600 staff, 120, 130 PhD students. I'll focus more on sort of some of the issues that we can help work with collaborating partners with. So we have a lot of sort of soil science and soil health. We can look at issues such as compaction, looking at soil fertility. If you're growing crops, you need to know your soil. Anybody who's in this industry has some impact with soil in one form or another. We probably have the biggest group of soil scientists anywhere in the UK now. We're also interested in developing diagnostics for pests and diseases. If we're not going to have the same portfolio of crop protection products that we've had in the past, we're going to have more targeted control. The targeted control, you've got to know what you've got, where and when. And we can develop molecular diagnostics for controlling, detecting and then thereby controlling. That can be part of a whole integrated pest management system. Something that's talked about a lot but not really put into practice. We've got a farm that we're looking at developing a sustainable management practices and how we can implement integrated pest management into real farming systems with real crops, not academic sort of exercises, but looking at real life and doing it how farmers can do it, what's practical, and always keeping the eye on trying to make money at the end of the day. That might involve using decision support tools. We have a big capability in terms of bioinformatics, biocomputing, statistics. Again, whether it's using data from digital images or from crop monitoring, we've got the expertise to be able to do that. We can develop and validate biocontrol agents. These are sort of looking at alternative ways of pest and disease management, not relying on sort of traditional ag chemicals. We can look at optimizing irrigation with our water expertise, looking at crop nutrition and how and alternative fertilizers, alternative sort of green manures, etc. There's a lot of interest in these, but very few people have actually put it into practice and can make money out of this. We can also look at different agronomic practices. Again, we've got the real fields, real crops, to be able, companies to be able to work with us to do that and actually make a difference to how they farm. We've also got a backup in terms of chemistry and phytochemistry. And I've got one of my colleagues, Rob Hancock, here today who'll be able to answer more questions on that. We're also looking at utilisation of waste material, whether it's from the barley waste from brewing and distilling or other food processing industries. I know you're all dying to see somebody get the red card and get rugby tackled off, so I'll not give you that pleasure. And just say that also we've got Millfield Research Services, who are a wholly owned subsidiary of the Institute. We do plant breeding, and that can actually convert some of this knowledge into products and varieties that people can grow. We can do efficacy trials, and it's important to mention we're CRD, Chemicals Regulatory Directorate approved. So if you need the regulatory approval, we can do that, and that's important. That there's no point getting the results and finding actually they're no good. The authorities won't accept them. We also do project management. We can come on board as a partner and help manage your project in terms of doing the risk register, doing your milestone register for you, or in collaboration with you. Take a lot of that burden away from the companies that are doing it by subcontracting it to people who do it full time. Just on time.
You know, I'm here really to explain and present the capabilities and the resources that ProMark International offer. I'm Lisa Williams, and I'm a senior consultant working within the Agri-Food Projects Department. If there's any queries, I can obviously pass these over to some of my colleagues in other departments. So a little bit about who we are and what we do. We're a team of 100 plus consultants based in Cheshire, but we also have a UK reach covering Scotland, Cornwall, but we also work internationally as well in countries such as South Africa, New Zealand, Australia and US, just as an example. We have a turnover of 8 million a year, so we're a private company. So obviously where we can help in terms of income from private sector for specific projects. Our expertise covers technical and farm business consultancy. I'll cover this shortly. Agri-food supply chain consultancy. So we don't just work from a producer base, we go all the way up to retailers. So we're working with Tesco and Sainsbury's on numerous projects as well. And environmental competencies, and I'll cover that. We work, or 2013, we worked in 40 plus countries. So as I've mentioned, it's very varied. And we are, I think most of you may know us from our parent company. So our parent company is Genus ABS, the global leader in terms of animal genetics. And we also have another division, PIC, which is porcine. So we cover bovine, porcine, and Promar International is the consultancy arm. But if you combine all our clients together of all three different divisions, we have just under 15,000 clients. So we feel that we can help in those areas in terms of engaging with industry. And I'll go through examples in terms of what we'll cover. So in terms of farming, you can see here that we offer technical support for farmers. This could range from feeding, forage growth, to actually developing business plans and looking at strategy development. Obviously business support for farmers and farm business accounts. So within the UK we collect 800 data sets from primarily dairy farmers, and our farm business secretaries will go out on farm on a monthly basis and collect all input and output data from these farms. We have one of the largest data sets in terms of dairy farming within the UK that we're able to access. And this is continually kept up to date. In terms of agri-food, so the part of the business that I actually work for, as I've mentioned, we have a global and local research consultancy, so we can work on projects in Cheshire, but these could range to projects in China. So very varied in terms of market development, so working with private companies, such as we've recently worked with Nestle in terms of bringing over a group of farmers into the UK. And we're also working with Sainsbury's in terms of looking at promotions and the impacts on waste. We do cover the whole farm to fork supply chain, and we are definitely focused on delivering client solutions. The last thing that we want is to work with clients, to leave a document there, to work with them, and then for nothing to happen. So it's really important, I've got the yellow card, so it's really important that we focus on delivering solutions. Now in terms of environment, this is a new area for us that we've been working on for the last 2.5 years. But again, we offer a number of services ranging from water, soil, AD, and we've recently just developed a carbon footprinting tool. We're also offering resource efficiencies, particularly in the northwest of England, but this can be offered wider. And we're also working on training and development. So I was asked in terms of what do we need from this today. I guess really we require access to credible academic institutions. So we can work with our clients in terms of offering basically to be able to develop and implement innovative solutions within the agricultural technology sector. I was just going for the red card, so I think I'm just going.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I represent 4C Design, 4C Engineering here. Our strapline is we make ideas valuable. We actually make things, and a little bit more than that, we make things that probably nobody has made before. So we're basically in the business of making prototypes and taking ideas and making them actually work in practice. we design and make products. We actually make them that customers want to use and pay for. We have a facility in Glasgow, an office facility in Glasgow, and below that we have a workshop twice the size of the office. So our approach is very much to actually get our hands dirty, get in, actually mock things up first of all before we refer to a computer. So quite unlike a lot of design consultants, we're not bolted to a computer to start with. We're very, very practical indeed. We have a full engineering service approach to product design, and what we're always about is groundbreaking stuff. We're doing new things in a whole series of fields that people haven't done before. We have a full range of engineering capabilities, mechanical, structural, electrical, electronics. We've just established a sister facility in Inverness that has a much more heavy-duty mechanical engineering and offshore expertise, so and modelling as well. So we've got quite a wide range of capability to offer. And we have a track record of working in consortia, including TSB project, one in the engineering call that came out last summer. That's at the final stage at the moment. So we're quite well versed in working with others in that. As I say, we've got 12 years. We've been established 12 years. We've got a good, solid track record of 300 odd customers of developing successful projects in the agri-tech area and in lots of other areas. And I'll just give you some examples of these. An animal tagging gun, which is been a very successful product for Roxanne. In fact, it's an award-winning product. This working with the Morden Research Institute, a vaccine machine with Morden, and then most recently again with Morden, a lamb castration device, which is not my particular expertise, but this has been field tested in Australia just last month, December, and moving on to second stage trials. That's been quite a long time in coming. So we're interested in working with anyone who wants to actually take some of the ideas, and I'm sure there are lots of them here, forward and actually implement them in the field. Our expertise is in the process of taking ideas across the field. We work from toys across to some renewable energy projects, some very heavy-duty, heavy metal stuff. So our expertise is not particularly sector-based, but more in the process of creating things that actually work. And just to give you a final example on that, that was a project that kept us quite busy last year. We designed and manufactured Queen's Baton for the Commonwealth Games. There's absolutely nothing to do with today, but it's certainly a fun project.
I'm here to introduce you to the Morden Group. We're based about 10 miles from here, just south of Edinburgh, near Pennycook. Our parent organisation is a charity. We're a member-based organisation. We have about 10,000 farmers and vets as members. We're well rooted in the farming community. The parts of the organisation which are relevant to today's discussion are the Morden Research Institute, which has a focus on infectious diseases of livestock. We've got about 200 staff working at the institute. We're a major research provider for the Scottish Government, but we also have a number of external funding streams. We've got expertise in a number of scientific disciplines. We work with all species of livestock, and more recently we've become involved in fish vaccines. The outputs from the institute are vaccines, diagnostics and disease control measures. The other arm of the group that I want to mention today is our contract testing arm, Morden Scientific. We're GMP accredited. We work with all of the major animal health companies worldwide. We do a lot of efficacy and safety trials for veterinary medicines. Wayne. I'm slightly wonky on the slide, but what I want to mention also is our facilities. We've got extensive laboratory and animal facilities. We have a couple of farms, but I think importantly is that we can work with infectious agents up to containment level 3. We also have an operating theatre, a post-mortem suite, so we're quite flexible in the type of procedures we can carry out which might be relevant to a particular study. Our established quality systems are very relevant when working with the animal health industry, and we've expertise in good laboratory practice, good manufacturing practice, and veterinary GCP trials. What our interest in today's meeting and the call is to work with partners that are interested in taking veterinary vaccines forward, and also we work in the development of diagnostic tests. So if there are people here with diagnostic platforms that are interested in taking into the livestock health environment, we'd be interested in talking to them. We do have experience in working with TSB. We've got a number of applications in at the moment, and Modern Scientific, we currently have a TSB Smart grant for a porcine disease model. So we're getting more and more experience in the procedures of working with TSB, and we'd be interested to have further discussions in any of those areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just start by asking you all a question? I know a couple of people in the room of FERA, but can I just have a show of hands as to who has heard of the Food and Environment Research Agency, or FERA? Okay, thank you. That's good. Okay. Conscious that a lot of people have already spoken about what they can do, I'll keep this as short as I can. But in terms of TSB work, FERA have won over the last 4 or 5 years 13 TSB projects, securing over £3.2 million in grants. We have a team of people that specifically look after the non-science bit of grant, project management, administration, etc., as well as the scientists that actually do the work. We're number 1 in the UK and number 3 in Europe for EU knowledge-based bioeconomy projects, in terms of the ones that we coordinate, the value of about €27 million, which is something that's developed over the last 3 years. So we're very good at understanding how consortia work, how complex funding mechanisms work, as well as being able to do the science. The picture there is of the site in York, which is our main site, but we have sites dotted across the country as well. And we have around about 600 scientists that work for FERA. I've only been with them for about 18 months. I get the impression that a lot of people think that FERA, as part of DEFRA, can't and won't do work with others outside of government. We will and we want to. We provide applied science solutions to other parts of government, but increasingly to other sectors, private sector, etc. The areas of science that we're into, very, very wide, very broad, but in summary, and I can't go into all of them right now, obviously, there's that many, but bioanalytical chemistry, molecular biology, bioinformatics, modelling, risk analysis. We are the national reference laboratory for 3 separate areas, and we're very, very much open for business. So, how do we deliver? We split how we do things into a number of areas, so I'll just very quickly whiz through those. We have the Centre for Chemical Safety and Stewardship, which looks at environmental risk, fate and behavioural studies. We then have the Detection and Surveillance Technologies Centre of Excellence for Diagnostics and Analytical Science, which is a global leader in the identification of new and previously unidentified threats. The plant clinic at FERA handles over 8,500 samples every year, and we are developing an agri-tech research team, which will become, I think, the leading UK Centre for Sustainable Agriculture and Plant Protection Research. I've met somebody in the room who knows about our bee work already, but we have the National Bee Unit at FERA, and we have other inspectorates as well. And then we have another, down here now, knowledge products and training, which is things like a crop monitor, which gives farmers real-time information for decision making on potential diseases. The Agri-Food Resilience Initiative at FERA is a joint initiative with the University of York, and that's focusing on food and non-food crop production systems. It's at this stage an holistic approach, but if you want to develop that further. We have the Centre for Crop Health, which is delivering integrated solutions to safeguard the yield and quality in both arable and horticultural crops. And then we have really what we're here for today, which is to talk to both industrial and academic partners to form consortia to bid for work through the TSB for agri-tech specialists. That's it. Thank you.
We're a £50 million turnover business. We have 3 manufacturing sites. We employ about 450 people, and we have 12 trout farms throughout Scotland. Our customer base is Marks and Spencer's, Sainsbury's, Tesco, Asda, and we have a full range of products: raw trout, added value, fish products, hot smoked salmon, cold smoked salmon, and scampi. So you might wonder what I'm doing here with this illustrious company today. Well, I'm really concerned. Could you move that one? Just one. This one. I'm really here because of inconsistency in quality of farmed fish in Scotland, trout and salmon. The flesh quality is very variable, and it causes us as processors and as fish farmers real problems. So I have a project outline which is to look at I'll just read it out. The aim of the project is to better understand the factors that influence flesh texture and ultimately product quality. In doing this, we'll identify specific measures that can be implemented in feeding, animal husbandry, fish harvesting and processing to ensure a more consistent flesh product quality. So there's a number of factors affecting. We just need to understand the whole process better in order to get a more consistent product. And there's a number of presentations before me that I'm sure I can talk to people and can go somewhere with the aims of this project. Thank you.